Welcome to another episode of the Resilient Riches podcast. We have a tremendous guest for you, Harel Chorev, Dr. Harel Chorev, reigning from Israel. If you've seen any media, any experts out there, you're going to see Dr. Chorev right there, front and center. He's been on probably over 200 international media stations talking about what's going on in Israel. We know Harel when he was back here living in the U.S. He was living in New Jersey, or Tel Aviv, as some people call it. Dr. Harel, good friend of ours. We're really excited to have you. He's the leading expert on on what's going on with Palestine right now, and really at Tel Aviv University. He's been a historian. He's a teacher. He's an educator. It's really impressive of what you've been doing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you
Harel.
for having me.
So, Harel, can you give us a little bit of your background, how you got into what you're doing, and then how you got this fame all of a sudden that you've been really a spokesperson and a leader in talking about what's going on with this terrorism and understanding the Palestinian people?
Well, I think the issues, Middle Eastern issues were always something that I cared about dearly, and I think I was politicized since I was 6 years old. I can really remember the moment. It was right before the elections of 1977 when I was 6. And everybody discussed who are the parties, who your parents going to vote, and so on and so forth. And I created a monster in my shape in the form of my son. My own son is exactly the same. He's 14 already, but he's doing a lot of I would say foreign work, and he's speaking on one of the platforms day and night, I would say, with people around the world, explaining them the situation here. Is highly politicized Zionist as myself, and really devoted to this. However, some professions run in the family, and mine, Middle Eastern expert, was actually inherited. I took it from my mom, my late mother. She studied her BA at Middle Eastern Studies. She always thought it would fit me, and this is exactly what I did. After trying to be an engineer of management, I actually studied engineering, but I didn't like it. I didn't work in it even for a day, and I've decided to go further and to acquire education in humanities, history. I always loved history, and particularly Middle Eastern studies, although I debated with myself because I also always been very interested in the history of the Holocaust and the Second World War. Now, after finishing my BA, I stood in a junction where I needed to decide what next. And like many Israelis kids, I think, I had this childish dream to go to the Mossad and to become a Mossad agent. I was 20 something back then, and I actually started doing something about it. And but after half a year of tests and all kinds of examinations, they told me that they won't accept me. Not that I failed, but other ones and other the position. Anyway, so I said to myself,
I told you to go into modeling instead. They said go into modeling instead. You got the hair, you got the chin, you're good to go.
And just to explain to our listeners, the way that it works in Israel is that every teenager goes into the army first for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then after 3 years, that's when you go to college. That's when you got your BA. So you're already, it's not like in North America where you're going right out of high school, perhaps to college. In Israel, you first serve for 3 years and then you go to the college. Then you go to college. So by the time you're trying to get into Mossad, you're probably, 25 or 24 or something like that?
25 or even 26, because I was already after engineering studies. So you can understand that I spent some time out there. But yeah, as someone who teach also overseas students, I can tell the difference, in how it works and what kind of state of mind they're coming. And when you're at this stage, that kind of stage in your life, you already know what you want to do. But I always took into account that most of the people, most of the people who wants to go to this kind of organization will not be accepted, and so from the very beginning I said, okay, if they won't accept me, I will just go further to do my PhD in Israel. Also, something that needs to be emphasized is that in Israel you don't do college and then you go straight to PhD like in America. In Israel, you do BA, MA, and only then PhD. So it's a very long, I would say, track. It takes you at least 11, 12 years. Okay, something like that, averagely. So this is exactly what I did. It's a very frustrating track because for many years you need the support of your wife, of scholarship, really living, on the edge. But it came out well, and I was accepted to the Moshe Dayan Center of Middle Eastern Studies under the supervision of my dear friend and boss, Professor Uzi Rabi, who is extremely famous. I think if you would ask the average Israeli who is the most famous Middle Eastern expert in Israel, he will tell you immediately Uzi Rabi. And we're good friends, and I'm there, and I just did what I love to do, which is research on both historical, typical historical manners, and at the same time doing research on contemporary issues. So on the one hand, I'm an expert on families, clans, regional identity, all sorts of very academic, historical kind of thing. And on the other hand, my expertise is definitely on terrorism, and particularly lone wolf, so-called lone wolf terrorism, which is what I do on a daily basis. Within that context, Hamas plays a very, I would say, a major role. So you may say I'm an expert on Hamas as well.
So how did the media pick you up? How did you get into becoming this international superstar?
Well, you're flattering me.
Because it's not very common. It's not very common. Of course, I have to flatter. We're friends.
Well, I think it's word to mouth, as always. When you're doing well with one platform, the word spreads out, and then they ask you again and again and again. And it worked with most of them, ranging from CNN to BBC Arabic and many others. The Germans, I'm a good friend of the Germans. Every day.
That's good. Do you find that there was a lot of there was some hostility? Did you find that when you went on the media, because you do have a tremendous amount of information, do you find that when you went on the media, they were kind of trying to corner you and bring in their views and try to twist what you were saying, or or was it just trying to learn and trying to educate their viewers?
Well, personally, I didn't feel any hostility, although some hosts try to ask you tough questions, but I have no problem with tough questions because I know the truth is on my side, our side. So I feel on a very, very safe ground. And I actually had some sort of clashes with the other guests. Usually BBC Arabic, they bring all sorts of experts from Egypt, even from Israel, someone who was a Knesset member, a parliament member, an Arab one, who was very hostile. He didn't care about October 7th. And I told him strictly, in front of, I don't know how many millions watches this show, that it's a shame that he's an Israeli citizen and he doesn't respect, the fact that so many Israelis were butchered that day. How did he answer me? Like a good Jew, with another question, asking why do I don't condemn the IDF for the civilians who are killed in the Gaza Strip. Of course, I dealt with it easily, but
What was your response to that?
I said that he should blame Hamas for whatever he's blaming us, and we have no other choice. We didn't initiate this thing. We are not the whining butchers they are, okay? Whining butchers because, on the one hand, they are butchers, and then when you retaliate, like any normal country, they are whining, or the screaming butchers, if you like. This is exactly their strategy on these things, showing the West how poor they are, how miserable they are, Hamas. And then on the other hand, when they're talking to their followers, they're showing all these horrific videos of rape, of burning people, entire families, all this genocide that they did there proudly. It's some sort of I don't know how to put it, mentally disorder, that such a sadistic thing can be cheered up by those people. And this is exactly the way they behave.
That's their strategy. So did he have a response after that? After you mentioned to him how clearly Hamas is using the civilians as human shields, and what do you want us to do? Like, just leave it alone? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, they usually give
do you have any further response?
Well, they usually give you this silly smile, and alongside with it was inflated by the Israelis, and most of the stories there are fabricated. It's pretty amazing that people that sometimes lived, I don't know, a few kilometers from you, lived in an entirely different world in the sense of the narratives they're getting, or I would say want to believe, because this is how fake news is built or believed. People want to believe their fundamental beliefs. They don't want anyone to interrupt them with that. So if you're providing me a lie that is strengthening it, great. This is exactly what I need. And this Knesset member, this Issam Mahul guy, was gave me this silly smile, and he said, "Yeah, it's all propaganda." That's okay with me. I have no problem with answering them, usually more harshly than they are used to from a normal academic. And by the way, Yair, I think it's part of the thing. And I was told by one of the morning shows hosts just a week ago. He told me, you're not a normal academic in the sense that you're not. You can be a little bit rigid when need, or connected to the field or the ground, as we say. And I think it's a combination that works, because you're coming with knowledge and truth. You're not playing around. Always the truth, by the way. Sometimes it can be hurting, sometimes it can be criticizing. I have a lot to criticize our government, for example, these days, but still the truth, and but with a real connection to what is going on. And I think many, not only in Israel, in the world, particularly America, are sick and tired with academic that sells them visions that has nothing to do with the reality, with the truth.
Yeah, it's a big thing with the academics is that you can't teach a child, and we have young kids. We're teaching our kids how to talk, how to this, how to that. You can't teach a child and show them a book and say, hey, go, here's a book, you read it, go ride your bike. You can't teach a child how to be a good person by reading this book. You have to do it in action. And the big thing with the academics, they try to prove, look at this book and look at this textbook and look at these PhDs, which I love that we don't have any of them because it doesn't do anything. But when you have a combination of the understanding and experience and actually living, that's when you're going to be a lot more impactful, and that's when you're going to be a lot better spoken. And honestly, you're telling the truth because you also lived experience. Somebody who wrote a book that you're reading doesn't mean that they're biased. It could mean that they're biased. So when you're actually an academic and you look at the entire concept and then you go out and practice, it's so unique. Do you find what happened with the Harvard, MIT, UPenn, and I don't want to just give those three because it's a lot of universities right now that are also inciting.
I have another son at Rutgers. I have a son at Rutgers right now, and he's experienced the same. And that's really the problem. That's why the students. It's all theory. It's all academia. It's nothing. It's so removed from reality that free Palestine from the river to the sea. They don't even know what it means.
Yeah. What do you say to those other academics that are not educating from experience? They're educating from books that are misleading and fake.
It's not just they could choose different books, okay? Books that are more honest, more really better. And I can give you a list of books like that in let's say in regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But they chose to show a certain kind of books and to teach a certain kind of narrative. They are doing what we call a frame or framing the agenda by certain ideas which are from the very beginning setting the limits of what is wrong and what is right. Okay? This goes alongside with all sorts of ideas such as intersectionality, for example. In Today Academy, you cannot say, for example, that you are green, that you are pro-LGBT, that you are, I don't know what, anything else which is human rights and so on and so forth. And at the same time, of course, feminist, and at the same time, to say that you're a Zionist. Why? Because Zionism is connected to bad, and bad is connected to bad, which is connected to bad, as good is connected to good. This is the whole idea of intersectionality. At the end of the day, if you try to understand this coalition of it's not minorities, it's like marginalized groups, okay? As if the Jews were always, but you can understand it to say about Jews white privileges. This is really insane and ignorance, which really is striking. But it's coming from the same school.
I've been told,
all of it coming from the same school. And I think we need to fight it. We know why it happens. We know why the mind of those educators in the academy are all the same. They bring each other. They into the. I have a story for you. I gave a lecture about a year ago in New York, and I was talking about anti-Semitism. Now I've categorized it, okay, particularly in regard to New York area, okay. Why are the Jews suffering from anti-Semitism? Who are the groups who are involved? So I divided it. You have the Muslim Brotherhood. You have alongside with the radical left. You have right wingers, extreme right wing, and you have also, unfortunately. What can you do? You have, unfortunately, also anti-Semitism among black people. Okay? This is a fact. If you check on the events, on the attacks that took place, it plays part of it. Some of them are are Farrakhan guys. Some of them are Black Hebrews. All sorts of groups. It doesn't matter, but it exists. Okay, you cannot, say it doesn't exist. And people told me before the lecture, when they saw the lecture, said, you are moderate indeed. You're not, I'm academic. I'm not trying to say anything, which is racist or anything like that. But they're saying, in today's atmosphere, you cannot say anything about it. You cannot criticize anyone, any group like that, because immediately you will be canceled as anti-black, anti-Muslims, Islamophobe, and so on and so forth. Okay? And I think this is really terrible. Really terrible. I think what happened to the academic arena in United States with all these great schools, I wouldn't let's go to the bottom line. I wouldn't send my kids to study in an American university, period. At today's shape, never ever. If someone who pays 75 to 100 Ks, okay, per year in some Ivy League university comes out and think that Yasser Arafat was the first president of Israel, Houston, we've got a problem. And this is from an Ivy League university.
And so I went to Rutgers, which is a state school. And while you're going through Rutgers, everybody's talking about, I got this job at JP Morgan, got this job here, I got this job there. And I was thinking, I was the only person. I used to give lectures across my university about entrepreneurship and thinking for yourself. But the whole focus is to join the pack and follow the pack. And the universities and the American university system is follow the pack. You'll get a good job. You make $70,000 a year. You'll then eventually buy that sports car, and then the sports car will go too fast. You'll crash and die. And your whole life is kind of projected out to you in such a short amount of time. The one thing that I love about my upbringing, and I give a lot of credit to my father and my mother, I would say in this regard, probably more to my father, who's on this call. So he's paying me extra.
I'm listening. I heard it.
But the main thing that he did was independent thought. What are you absorbing? Take what you absorb, leave the crap, keep the good. There is good in everything, but you have to be very, very strong mind, and you have to always think for yourself and do what you think is passionate about and lead with that. Don't just, they say Yasser Arafat was the first president of Israel, and you don't even look it up. You just take it as fact. These are not gods. These are not anything. And from that, we were able to start our first business. And my first year out of college, I made $250,000. The next person after me made $90,000, and they made that person a spectacle that he made $90,000 his first year out of college. And I'm thinking, you don't even talk about me. I did this here. I've spoken here, but the $90,000 is more glorified. It's really interesting, and I give that to younger people. And part of what we're talking about in this podcast is resilient riches. Younger people need to get educated and understand there is a lot of information, but not all information is equal. And you need to be very specific on what the right information is and question information.
No, but I think what you said is true, Yair. You have to have independent thought. You have to question. You have to not just take everything at face value. I credit my own mother for that. We would come home and say, all my friends have XYZ, and they say, so what? You think for yourself. We don't care what everybody else is doing. And that's what's come through, and that's what's important.
That's actually the
question
Jewish
those
way.
things. I never heard Yasser Arafat was
the only way we live.
Yeah.
Harel, what do you see now? What is your solution, and what is the equation for the aftermath? Israel will win this war. That there's never been a discussion. That's never been a question. But what do you see the aftermath of what's going to go on in Palestine and what's going to go on around the world? Because we're not stuck in Gaza. The Gaza war is a tiny little piece of what's really going on. What do you think is going to happen next? And what is the solution to fix this deeply rooted and deeply ingrained in the core of humanity across the world's problem? And why hasn't it worked before? And who's been advocating to do it?
And maybe there's no solution. Maybe this is just the way the world is.
Harel knows there's a solution.
Yeah, well, let me start with the bottom line. The Gaza Strip is the last stronghold of Muslim Brotherhood as a political, not a political force, as a political regime. The last stronghold in the Arab world. They used to have more, and they were eradicated in all of those countries. Egypt, and in the Gulf area, they tried to as well, but they were eradicated. They were eradicated by other Muslim forces. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. These countries, when you ask them about the Muslim Brotherhood, they will deal with them. They will treat them as enemies. They will tell you they are our enemies and we did our best to eradicate them and we are still hunting them overseas. For example, when I was exploring the network of Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, because it's led by Hamas in the US, which is a vast, terrifying network of organization. Our best sources came from these places, from United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. They were anxious to help us with materials, which of course we checked and so on. And it tells you that it's possible. It's possible to root them out while presenting an alternative. Now, you will ask what kind of an alternative. So in this kind of a society, I wouldn't go with anything which is universal, liberal, of that sort, of course. I would go with something with continuity, something that is established anyway, which is, of course, Islam. However, not the same Islam. Islam, which is the kind of Islam that being taught in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates today, which is much more moderate, particularly towards Israel. You know, they changed their whole textbooks and education system. Israel is presented differently. The West is presented differently.
It's very progressive now. It's very. We have clients that live here that are originally from Saudi Arabia, and they are very pro-Israel. They've messaged me. They've called me saying, "Hey, we're with you. We're Muslim, but we're with you." It's amazing.
Would you classify the West Bank that way? Is that what's going on in the West Bank? Because the West Bank is quiet now.
Well, actually, they just finished a big operation in Jenin, which turned to be some sort of a small Gaza. In the past 3 years or so, the Palestinian Authority actually lost any control over that part of the West Bank. But Israel actually conducted another operation just in the past 72 hours or so, and arrested many and trying to really dismantle this minor Gaza in the West Bank. Anyway, the problem in the West Bank is with the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority could be much better, let's say, behave much better. Not in the sense that we're expecting them to be pro-Israelis, okay? We're not. But if you're saying that you're striving for peace, if you're saying that that you pursue a two-state solution, for example, how come your whole textbooks are teaching against this principle? Teaching that the Kotel, okay, the Kotel, the Western Wall is a Muslim place. How can you teach math using all sorts of questions? Sort of in the first Intifada, 2,000 Palestinian shaheeds die. In the second Intifada, 5,000 shaheeds die. How many shaheeds died in the two Intifadas? How can you teach that and say at the same time that you're pro-peace? That's, excuse me, you know what I'm going to say. So we part of this thing And it's not a coincidence that President Biden said a renewed Palestinian Authority, because now people realize October 7th was really a watershed, but not only vis-a-vis Hamas, but also regarding the Palestinian Authority, that what we had before cannot prolong, cannot exist after October 7th. And renewing the Palestinian Authority means, first and foremost, changing radically their content of education system, which is horrible. There are a lot of research about it. And one of the groups that are following it, and I seriously recommend, is Impact Group. You can really have all the content. You can see what is going on there. You can see it by your eyes, translated, and so on. And the second thing is, of course, stop funding terrorists, period. Stop funding terrorist families. It encourages terror. You cannot say that you're pro-peace and fund terror, okay? And saying, okay, it's our shaheeds and so on and so forth. I know it's unpleasant. It's against the Palestinian narrative, but something within the Palestinian society needs to be radically changed. And if they won't change, they won't see nothing closer to a state. We just don't trust them. It's really important to explain what happened to most Israelis, left to right, since October 7th. You cannot really tell differences today between left and right Israelis. They're all speaking the same ideas, which are not extreme one, but just saying, we did a mistake. We thought that we can just close a territory and throw the key, okay, close the walls and let them live there, hoping that they will become some sort of a Singapore or Monte Carlo, but eventually what we got is a terror state with the billions infrastructure of tunnels. Okay,
it was very clear. It was very clarifying. October 7th.
Yeah,
it was very clarifying. And I'll tell you the truth. We were in TNEC for many years, and there was always this like liberal type of attitude, even among the modern Orthodox. But as history progressed, as the past has progressed, it became more clear that that's just not tenable. It's just not reality. You just can't trust them.
Exactly. So this is the way I see the future. And I think if the Palestinians will not cooperate with it, okay, cooperate with whatever will need to be done in the Gaza Strip, which would be radical. But the whole situation there, unfortunately, is radical at the moment, so many places are ruined, and it will take a lot of years to build something new. However, it's also some sort of a opportunity to do a catharsis, okay, like a major event in the history that allows you to say, okay, white blank page, let's do something new, let's build something else. It may sound naive, but on the other hand, people must understand it's just that we won't accept anything else at the moment. In the way that the things turned out, the way this thing become personal for any Israeli, personal. And
it's not just Israeli. It's not just Israeli. It's Jewish around the world.
Jewish around the world.
Jews around the world took it personally because each person, like myself, we felt, that could have been Yair. Yair served there many years ago on those lines. Could be my own grandchildren, maybe that could. Every Jew felt that around the world.
Exactly. Not to mention, of course, what happened after this, like this horrible Cornell professor saying that he was energized and exhilarated. I had the pleasure to condemn him on Fox News. And
I had the students reach out to me after I spoke on Fox. They reached out to me.
Really?
Yeah, they were like, "How'd you do it? How were you able to stand up?" aren't you scared for your life? And I said, no, of course not. You don't eliminate darkness by hiding in the dark. You eliminate darkness
Confronting.
by taking the light that you have and enhancing it and shining it as bright as you possibly
Exactly.
can.
And I think this is part of the problem in the Jewish communities today in the United States. I think it for many years already, and I think much can be done to improve the situation. I don't think they're united enough. I think their organization are not united enough. So many Jewish organizations which are powerful by themselves, but they can't just work together. And this is really heartbreaking. I see wants to be a powerful organization, well, in the sense of, their own turf, like Hillel, for example. Hillel used to flag the Israeli flag over any university in the past. Now they're not saying anything. They're like under the radar. Please don't. I don't want to use this word, but it's really heartbreaking, because I think if the Jews were showing a united front, which is unfrightened by any of those intimidations, they could achieve much more. Unfortunately, we also have those Jews that were brainwashed, and even
Absolutely.
participate these efforts against our own people.
Yeah, when I wrestled in high school, my finals match, I wrestled this guy, and I don't want to say his name because I don't want to give him an ounce of additional audience. He went to the army. He gets kicked out of the Israeli army. I went to the army also, but I obviously did okay there. He gets kicked out of the Israeli army, and he's been outspoken against Israel, and he goes on CNN, and he's well spoken. It's not that he's not well spoken. He goes on CNN, he goes on other media outlets, and he talks anti-Israel and anti-Jewish, and he went to a yeshiva high school. So understanding that maybe you had some trauma in your life and you're taking it out on past trauma, but it feels like you're kind of like a traitor, and it feels very similar, and correct me if I'm wrong, but very similar to Jews who turn on other Jews in the Holocaust. That's kind of how people are feeling. It's the Jews that are turning on us. Coming at Israel right now, it's not Israel. You're coming at Jews, and you're really coming in and you're really attacking your own people, and they don't care about you. No one, these Hamas is not your
Yeah.
friend. If you went in there, there would be a big problem over there for you. You're not gonna make it through. But what do you see the next stage? So let's say Israel finishes and eliminates Hamas.
Let me just remark that so often this is the case. So often I can give you thousands of cases, probably, including well-known professors, Jewish, that became to be, one in the East Coast, the other one in the West Coast, Jews who became like the polars of anti-Israeli spokesperson. And so often you discovered that behind such behavior hides some sort of a personal problem, personal experience, personal problem, personal identity problem. I met it also I was teaching at Yeshiva University, and I one of my students came out to me after the class, and he spoke with me, and he said things about his own identity, all sorts of issues, okay, with his own identity. And he said, I feel totally different than the rest. And I also, it affects my political views. They are right, I am left. And I couldn't, obviously I didn't say anything about it. I was, apathic and so on. But I couldn't ignore the fact that it was obvious that he has so many personal issues, and he projected on his collective identity. Okay, and when I spoke about it, with not on his case, of course, but the general phenomena of these self-hating Jews, with a psychologist, and she told me something really interesting. And she said, when it's hard for you to deal with your own issues, you attack the other parts of yourself, which is your collective identity. because it's very hard to attack yourself. You cannot live with yourself constantly saying you're bad, you're worse, your identity, your sexual identity, your whatever it will be. If you have some sort of a unsettled issue with yourself, and then you go to your collective identity and you blame them and excluding yourself.
It's amazing what you're saying. What would be the next stage? Let's just have the scenario: Israel completely annihilates Hamas. I don't know if you think that's possible or impossible. And it sounds like, just I want to clarify something from before. It sounds like the Muslim Brotherhood's the umbrella, and Hamas is under that umbrella.
Hamas is the branch of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay.
Of the global Muslim Brotherhood.
And what other branches are under the Muslim Brotherhood?
Well, in America, you have all sorts of organizations, such as AMP, which is American Muslims for Palestine, SJP, Student for Justice in Palestine, AJP, CARE. CARE is, which was ousted.
So all these organizations are like Hamas. They're Hamas, not Hamas sympathizers. They're under the Muslim. They're another organization that's anti the West.
Well, a guy named Nihad Awad is leading the CARE today, okay? And he's a convicted Hamas member in Israel. Palestinians. You will see that many of them are Palestinians, and if they are Palestinians, most likely they are Hamas. They're not just Muslim Brotherhood, but since Hamas is a Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood branch, they are Hamas. And I can give you thousands of examples. Well-known professors like Khatem Bazian. Maybe you heard his name, but if you Google it, you will find out he's a Muslim Brotherhood Hamas supporter. And actually, at the moment, he's part of a big trial against those Hamas organizations in the U.S. And you have dozens of other organizations in the U.S. which are, at the end of the day, Hamas/Muslim Brotherhood organization, and it's they are so successful there and so united that it is frightening and at the same time frustrating that the Jews that are there for ages already are not so efficient in the way they deal with them. They are there, I don't know, since the 80s or something. Those organizations, those people, that some of them were already convicted here. You know, Musa Abu Marzouk is the founder of all this thing, and he's still the deputy chairman of Hamas, and I think it's a huge problem. But this is regarding Hamas. By the way, in Europe, it's the same kind of organization. But in Europe, they already started to understand what kind of a problem they're dealing with. By the way, the White House just a week ago declared the CARE as it didn't outlawed it, but basically disconnected all its connections with it, because I think even the FBI did something in that sense, or declared CARE as a highly suspicious organization in connections with Hamas years ago, by the way. Anyway, regarding your question, first, yes, it's possible. Of course, it's possible. Any organization can be eliminated, ranging from the Nazis to Japan, militant let's say the military elite of Japan in the Second World War, all the way to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Organization can be destroyed, period. Now, naturally, the ideas are not so easy to be destroyed. The ideas behind it, the ideology. But that's also a possibility, because the Marshall Plan and the American destroyed the militant idea behind Japan and and Nazism in Germany. And we need to remember, a minute before, in historical terms, a minute before, these two countries were those ideologies were supported by most of the people in their countries. Okay, and today we're talking about the two most pacifist countries in the world. Germany and Japan. So even an idea can be rooted out. The way I see it is, first, Israel will have to make sure that it control militarily the area, because even after a full destruction of Hamas, you will still have all sorts of guerrilla attacks. I'm sure for years. It will take years to really fully control the military scene. But I would say within month from now, we will probably in a different situation, in a much better situation. However, at the same time, Israel will need to make sure that countries, I believe the right ones are the countries of the Gulf, to come with money, with investments, with their education system, with the fact that they are not foreigners, okay? They're not Christians, okay? They are not foreign powers. They are not a new form of crusaders in that sense, but rather Arab brothers, and they can do the change. Also, because they have the experience to do this change. They did that already. They did that. So to form a new education system and at the same time to invest money alongside with Palestinian partners. Who will they be? For example, Muhammad Dakhlan, who's the next PA member, is not, as we say in Hebrew, talit shekulat chelet. How do you translate it?
That's a hard one. That goes
not,
beyond my.
Yeah,
that's a hard
it's not
one to
crystal clear in terms of
we don't know exactly. It's like we don't know exactly what his future holds.
Yeah,
maybe
it's no. Well, I mean that he is in many of those Palestinian leaders are taken as corrupted, some more, some less. And he is also someone who was living in the United Arab Emirates for many years already, actually. I think since Hamas took over the Gaza Strip. He's from Gaza. He's a refugee from Gaza. And he left.
He knows. He actually knows.
So he's a Gazan. He has the legitimacy of a Gazan. And but he made a fortune in the United Arab Emirates. He's a strong man. He was the commander of one of the Palestinian Authority intelligence or security organizations, and he has good relations with Israel, which is also important. Okay, and so I think this kind of a combination might work, but sometimes it's to choose between bad and worst. And the worst at the moment is clear. We don't need even to think about it. I mean, nothing can be worse than a genocidal rapist organization such as Hamas. So whatever will come instead of it will be better. They already built their army of terror. They already invaded Israel and did horrific things. So anything that will come instead will be better in the way we see it.
I think you're right, Harel. I think you're right. I mean, you can have that kind of attitude where everything is better, but I think you hit the right point. The education has got to change. And anybody that is approved by Israel to come in there has got to be committed to changing that. Like you've said in Saudi Arabia, it's changed. That has to change. You can't have school children's books talking about how many Israelis you've killed or how many Jews have killed. You can't have that. It's just, how can you teach a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old, put that in their mind at that kind of age. And there has to be some value of human life put in there too. I mean, Hamas is the antithesis of how the Jews treat humans. Even the Hamas, we see on our videos that some Hamas soldiers are taken to Israeli hospitals to be treated, or a young girl they found at 3 a.m, they're treating her cuts. That attitude, I think that has to change. Whoever takes over has to have that commitment.
Definitely. That's really the most basic thing we need to demand. also, as I said, from the Palestinian, the renewed Palestinian Authority, as President Biden put it, that this is really essential. This is something that they need to take care of. I would, and yeah, I mean, what you have there at the moment is a Nazi-like education system. You know, they found Mein Kampf book in in schools and other places in the Gaza Strip. Not to mention their horrible summer camps where they teach kids how to shoot Jews, how to and dehumanization of Jews. This whole thing, you know, the writing was on the wall. Unfortunately, we just couldn't really move it from here to really internalize it. We knew what I can tell you as a researcher, following, you know, the social media, seeing how how they dehumanize Jews for years and years. Jews are not people; they are insects. And I just couldn't believe that they will come to a point that they will actually treat kids, toddlers, babies, women as if they were cockroaches. Sorry.
We never thought they'd go that far. We thought, you know,
Never.
It's in their head. They're thinking, let them have their own craziness. But we never thought that it would go this far. And now that it has, it crystallized the risk and the threat and the danger.
Absolutely.
And that's caused, you know, now we recognize the danger. Now it's mobilized us as a nation, people across the world to wipe it out. Because that's obviously the only solution.
So, Harel, what do you think the next steps are going to be? What do you see the future? Where do you see the Jews speaking out? What do you recommend to listeners around the world?
First, to line up, to gather together in the universities, you know, to choose the right leaders, to gather all the for example, Jewish students, support them, tell them not to be afraid of anything, and that they will be supported by whatever they need. Okay, and to confront those both anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli organizations, which, as I said, are basically Hamas organization. SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, is a Hamas organization. Unfortunately, supported by another Hamas. By the way, BDS in general in America is generated by Hamas and the Palestinian Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Okay, this is what we call the red-green coalition or alliance, and so to confront them, to show them that we're not afraid, that we will defend our own people. Okay. I don't want to go into stories, but maybe I should, that I got from a dear friend of mine. He's 64 years old now, but he was talking about his father. In the days, the Jews were not, let's say, typical middle class people, but sometimes blue collars and so on. And he told me about his father attacking, alongside with other Jews, a Nazi gather in Brooklyn. I think it was in the 30s or 50s, I'm not sure, but really they didn't let those Nazis speak. They basically, well, some would say attacked them, but you know, they confronted them. They showed them that we're not afraid. We're not afraid. We're not those white privileges spoiled Jews that can be beaten up and you know, the sheer anti-Semitism that people allow themselves today. It's just amazing. Did you see what happened in Auckland just yesterday? No, they destroyed.
No. Oh,
they destroyed the menorah that was placed in the public
Yes, that I
arena.
saw.
Auckland, the most anti-Semitic city in the United States, really, with a combination of both progressive American but ultra progressive, and with alongside with those Hamas people, which I always find crazy. But Mao Zedong once said, if you go too much to the left, you will find the extreme right, which is exactly the case here.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big
And
circle.
it became, to be okay. That's okay to attack Jews. That's okay to throw someone who wants to go to the bathroom in Auckland in this coffee shop, Furley's Coffee or something like that. It's okay. You can beat Jews. You can say whatever you want to them. It depends on the context. Sorry, I want to say, damn it.
Exactly.
We got into a stage when university presidents are not ashamed to speak in such a despicable way. I'm really ashamed. I'm ashamed, first as an academic, second as a human being that needs to see how someone who is supposed to be some sort of a academic and
and a role model. It's supposed to be a
models.
role model. It reminds me, I'm sure this is like precursor to Nazi Germany. I'm sure this is how it began.
Exactly.
This is what happened there. So all of a sudden it's okay. Who's a Jew anyway? Just go ahead.
Giving them those fake smiles when this parliament member, which is, by the way, my hero in the past week, which really crucified them.
Of course.
And they're giving it this fake, fake smile, as if it's okay to say, yes, it's okay to say genocide. Calling for genocide of the Jews depends on the context. What is wrong with you? So I think Jews should really unite and understand that it doesn't mean that we're not liberal. It doesn't mean that we're not humane. It doesn't mean that we're not progressive even, okay? It means that we understand when someone starts to BS us, okay? To try to sell us all kind of post-colonial crap. Sorry for my French. And
you could speak in English. Don't worry.
And it's they totally lost it. Who are they to preach me politically correctness? If this is where they came to, they lost any legitimacy to speak up. Anything.
100%. Harel, first we want to thank you so much for coming on. We know how busy your schedule is. You're being reached out all the time. For our listeners out there that are going in the education system, I would say the biggest part of this podcast and this interview is to talk about, you can go through the education system. You want to go into education, you want to be a leader, you want to do something, but you need to be a leader in your own context, and you need to run it in the correct way. Just because there's information doesn't make it correct information. Do your own independent research. See who's feeding information. I remember in college there was a big study that soda was actually healthy for you. Who ran the study? Pepsi. So if you're going to say, oh, all of a sudden hating Jews is actually the right thing, look who's funding hating Jews. And it's Hamas. It's the Muslim Brotherhood. It's all these ultra aggressive people that want to take power and are corrupt and are taking control of the world and brainwashing. So we really appreciate you coming on. One thing that we love doing on the podcast, just so we can really get to know you, if you said, hey, I have 5 core values that are to me that I hold dear to my life, what would you label those as?
Values of myself.
Of yourself.
And who you are, like what defines you? Like, is maybe some people say family, some people say loyalty, something like that.
Well,
I know this looks like we finally stumped. Harel's gone on BBC Arabic But all of a sudden, no problem.
Well,
We got
speaking
it.
about
Gotcha.
yourself,
We
it's
gotcha.
something else because you always want to stay modest and actually I you did not necessarily feel comfortable speaking about yourself, but yeah, I can say something that I think is meaningful. I want to say in this kind of situation and world when even among unfortunately among Jewish Americans there are sometimes not you know they don't accept Zionism as part of the deal or even against it. I want to say clearly, I am a Zionist. I am a Zionist. I'm proud of my Zionism. It's the most meaningful ideology for me and ever been the most meaningful one. It is combined with my Jewish identity, which is extremely strong as well. I don't see them in any hierarchy. They are combined together because this is how genuine they are. They are combined with each other. It's not a modern, it's not a colonial, it's not anything of that crap they are telling you in the universities. It is something genuine, and for me, it is my core identity. Of course, other than that, I am a professionalist. I am a family man. I am a citizen of the world, including. And I don't think any one of these contradict anything. Um,
No, no.
so that's it.
And I want to leave this off. I want to leave this off that if you speak the truth over and over again, you don't have to remember anything.
True.
It's very easy. You don't have to, if you lie, you have to remember what you lied. But if you speak the truth, you never have to remember. And that's something you're doing. You're going out, you're speaking the truth, not from a place of social media and TikTok and all these other places. You're speaking it from true contextualization and true historical facts. And it's so deep what you're doing. And we really appreciate you coming on. We really appreciate you educating our listeners and primarily the business owners around the world. And hopefully what you can keep doing and keep driving forward. Just a quick, I know you don't like talking about yourself, but where can people find you? And yeah, give a little plug for yourself.
Well, you can find me on Facebook, I guess. I'm still trying to open my own Twitter or X, as it's called now, account. But I'm on Facebook basically, and of course, if anyone wants to read my studies, they can be found easily in academia.edu under my own name, which is Harel Chorev, spelled out as HarelChorev.
And you have to get the popcorn in your throat before you say it, just to make sure that you actually do
Yeah,
it
right.
properly. But Harel, we love you. We appreciate
so
what you're
much.
doing. Thank you for being such an amazing
Thank you for coming.
advocate. And thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.